Welcome back.
Welcome back. I hope you're spending a good day, and we're going to continue this good day with another topic, and I'm certain that this is a topic that many of us will find interesting as heads of companies, human resources managers and other managers, and that's the new generation. How to manage the new generations, how to prepare their arrival in your company. I have with me a choice group of people this afternoon. I have the pleasure of having here Karine Blanc, who is the head of Decathlon in Luxembourg, and she's going to tell us in a minute what that means. François Bade on the other side, who is the manager and banking advice and human resources at Deloitte, and Matthieu Wendling, who is coach, internal and external coach at Inov-On. But let's perhaps start with asking the right questions. We're going to talk about the new generations. What are we talking about? We could perhaps find out what X, Y, and Z means. Baby boomers they stop at 64, or those born before 64 are baby boomers. 65 and 79, who are between 40 and 55 years old, is the X generation. And myself, I'm an X generation man. The Y are born between 80 and 94, and Generation Z between 96 and 2012. To make things more complicated, you can also say there are millennials who were born from the beginning of the 1980s, and if you followed the children of the baby boomers or the early X generation, you have the alphas. The alphas started being born around 2010 until 2025, and who consequently are the children of the millennials. Has everybody followed? Okay, let's do a test. I'm just joking, just kidding. So what we're talking about are young people in general, those who are joining us, who have new expectations and who are looking at us in a different way, us, the baby boomers or the X generation, and telling us, I don't have your model, I don't work like you do. So probably there is a way of trying to get them into our companies, these new co-workers. First question is every company concerned, or only services or distribution? The answer is, of course, no. Whether you are a small or medium-sized company or a big company, a public institution or a private institution, an association, all the young people joining these various types of organizations have expectations. They look at things differently. They're looking for meaning, for meaningfulness, and I think we're going to share some experience and statistics. But we, heads of companies or managers, it's a real topic, it's a real issue. In our companies today, we see a lack of competence, lack of skills. We are confronted. In the previous panel, we talked about this. We talked about the digitalization and everything that implies. Is everybody following? Is everybody capable of following? We're creating positions today. There is streaming, there's technology, there is data, big data, everything to do with cyber technology. Do we have the people? Can they evolve? Can they move forward towards these jobs? So we talk about the integration of these new people, but there is also a lack internally and also externally of skills. And to continue working, we need to adapt, to reinvent our models, and to change. And I think it's very important to have the guests here we have here today, because they can tell us from their own companies, moving companies that do things differently, and talk about studies on the topic. We can hear relevant statistics, studies on thousands of people, but also the outside look of a coach, who is probably going to give us a synthesis between theory and practice. I think we can start without further ado. Karine Blanc, what happens at Decathlon from your point of view? Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Decathlon historically has a very strong link with young people because we have the image of a company with many young people working there for many, many reasons. There are two main elements in Decathlon. It's the way we recruit people. We try to use fewer stereotypes, use fun, and as I'm going to explain later on, the profiles we recruit. We are looking to recruit practitioners, sports practitioners who take care of themselves and of their sports. So whatever the level of study, whatever the degrees, whatever their experience, what we're looking for is people who are passionate by sports and who care for their environment. And historically at Decathlon, we want to accompany young people. We take many students and try to train them, convey a number of values. Then they will stay with us or not. It's not so important. Let's take the shop in Arlon, not so far from here. We have 50% of our people who are less than 25 years old, who feel well in our company. And we also attract young people in our recruitment process. We do the recruitment a bit differently. The recruiting team is not necessarily managers. There are managers, but also co-workers who would like to do so, who are part of this recruitment team. And afterwards, we also organize collective recruitment sessions, which is always a lot of fun. There is always a little bit of discovery and discussions to find out more about the character and personality of our new recruits, but also collective sports. What we want to find out is how these people behave in a collective, because the collective is very important for us, and find out how these people are going to behave in the collective. And these are methods which are understood by the young generation, and they demystify recruitment, which can be stressful. We have one or two interviews, and then we say either yes or no, we take you or not. You don't have to wait for weeks. It's very straightforward. And it's quite a lot of fun, I can say, which also attracts the young generations. Matthieu, I heard this word équipier, staffer or co-worker. What does it mean? Well, équipier, a team worker. I said I'm a team worker like the 450 others who are part of our company. A co-worker, a team member. Why do we use the word équipier, team member? We think, well, wage earners want to have a wage, and in our company, they do not only want a wage, they also want something in our organizations. These are 8 very different organizations. We have a hotel and restaurant. We have one company where we do flexible hydraulic hoses. They had a crisis in 2009. That's why our manager reinvented the management model as it was created when the company was set up in 1995. And then we have many companies that are joining us regularly, and that quite often come on the behest of a team member who wants to put an idea into practice, give life to an idea, and this gives room for entrepreneurial thought. I would like to add one thing. We believe in the strength of collective intelligence and subsidiarity. These are things that we find important in organizations like ours, and we very often associate performance with happiness. Well, maybe happiness has been overused, but I could say well-being. People are a bit less unhappy in our company than in others. So performance and well-being is associated. And we have a company that is prosperous. People are flourishing. And this has been the case for many years now. Thank you, Matthieu. There is a parallel between what you are saying. Let me talk to you now about the study, François, your study on these young people. If we take one point, the pandemic, what does it say? What does the study say? Yes, good afternoon, everybody. This study we conducted in 2 stages in Deloitte across the world since the end of the 2019. we're going to touch again with the young people. 43 countries, 27 millennials, the Ys and the Zs you were mentioning, not exactly the same dates, but Y and Z. What does the study show? It shows that the pandemic, when you ask these young people in April, it did have a major impact for 2/3 of the people, of the respondents. This is considerable. It affected their career prospects, or their everyday job. We'll probably will be coming back to this. Even their working time. Why do I say working time? More than 1/3 of the respondents saw their working time go down suddenly during the pandemic. And in some countries where the social coverage is less good, they really lost their jobs or went into partial unemployment or furlough. And they're still positive. They see these generations Y and Z see the glass half full. They want to participate and build something new together with the others, a world after the pandemic. So if we try to take a high-level view of these young generations, there are some very clear characteristics. Let me mention two, because we could spend the whole afternoon on this. One is the fact that we have this hyper-connected generation. We spend a lot of time this afternoon talking about connectivity. And what I find extremely important is to see that this connection is not synonymous with well-being or with happiness. There is an American insurance company that for decades now has been doing a poll on loneliness. And always those who are 80 and 90, now the youngest are the 25. Those who feel the loneliest are the generation that is 25 years old. So solitude, loneliness hits the young generations very strongly, and we see this the way young people interact is no longer physical, it's virtual. In my open spaces, I'm fighting for people to stop sending emails to people sitting next to you. When you're in the coffee corner, sending a WhatsApp to a guy sitting just next to you. In my generation, it makes me mad. For them, it's natural, but at the same time, they suffer from this solitude, loneliness. And in the methods you're using, you try to combat loneliness as well. This is the first very clear phenomenon. The second one that I would like to note or to mention is the absence, the lack of willingness to work for big companies. Many freelancers, many more freelancers. The phenomenon is still moderate in Europe, 10 to 15%. In the United States, it's 45% freelancers. In the world of tech, more than 60% freelancers. 60% of the young people in tech are freelancers, which means that when you are a company, whatever the size, and you try to recruit somebody to your IT service or your IT department, your pool is already reduced by 60% before you even start. And we see this phenomenon accelerating more and more. And therefore, we all have the difficulty as employers to attract these young people to our companies. Does that really have an impact? When I read your study, I realized that there are some interesting statistics saying that 6 out of 10 workers estimate that the recent action of their employers make them feel like staying in the company. So if we do something, there is an impact. So we, as employers, we can influence the young people and convince them to stay with us. But we need to do the right things. You talked about the recruitment method, Karine, in your company. Fine, we've done the recruitment. Now I come to your company. What happens? Now it's interesting because Decathlon is a big group, but one of the answers that the group offered is to say the shops decides locally. So we come back to the local level, although we're part of a big group. And when a new co-worker arrives, we prepared a plan for that co-worker. There is an integration plan, and his co-workers care for his integration. So full immersion right from the start. And that gives us a collective spirit. The collective is very important, as I mentioned, and also gives them some well-being. We have tools. In our shops, we no longer use computers. We only use smartphones, and each worker has a smartphone, a personal smartphone. He's given immediately, and with that, the co-worker has access to e-learning. And we changed the e-learning at the beginning of September. It's more adapted to the young generations. It's very playful. It's games, so you can train at the same time, do your job. And this tool also gives you a direct link to the customers, enables you to do many things. And the new generations use the smartphone very well. It's part of their habits. And what they also learn is being multi-skilled. Internally, we don't use any titles, function titles, more for the outside world than for the inside. And they get multi-skilled. In Arlon, we have no team for the cash register. Everybody is trained, even the managers. And regularly, we spend some time as the cash register. And we trained to everything, which reduces this feeling, this hierarchical feeling. And here we say we all do the same thing. We all have the same role. This is when you arrive. And later, when you've been with us for some time, when the co-worker knows the basics of his job, I'm not saying after 6 months or a year, depending on his own rhythm or her own rhythm, and to assimilate his job, the co-worker can propose to work on a number of things that will be helpful for the shop. So they can come up with an idea and say, no, maybe we could do this or that. Then the co-worker would write, I would like to do this in the shop, have this role in the shop. Maybe you should give me so and so many hours per week for this role. And now potentially I can also offer something, so my pay should be increased by so and so many euros. So we go very far, and the co-worker presents his or her project, and there is a team also of co-workers who are going to say, yes, it sounds like a good idea, let's do it. And you have the right to make a mistake. So this co-worker may say, I had this mission, I've tested it, but it doesn't work, and I stop. No problem. But at least we tried, and the trial and error can produce something beautiful, or it can fail. So the co-workers, it gives them the incentive to do something creative for their co-workers and for the customers, almost like self-management. When we talked about this round table of the captain of the day, yes, the captain of the day, we try to be multi-skilled, so we have the head of our shop. We are obliged to have to do that. But this head of the shop is not responsible for the shop on an everyday basis. The responsibility is left to the co-workers. And we believe that responsibility is not necessarily linked to management, because this is the parallel that is very often drawn. Every co-worker, if they want more responsibility, they can say, I would like to be a captain or a permanent dispatcher. And that person, for a day, is responsible of the shop for one day. So if a co-worker has a problem, they go to see that person, even a customer. So they're the reference person of the day. And the co-worker also realizes what it means to have all this responsibility and feels even more involved and lives things, experience things, instead of getting orders from a manager telling him this is not okay and this is not okay. And for the other co-workers, it's okay because he or she is a peer, and we can work on problems because I realize that certain things are not working or the customers don't like it. So we can really progress, work together, and we don't like the top-down hierarchy. It's our system is collaborative, bottom-up, and it works quite well. So you have an extremely flat hierarchy. So you have the head of the shop and everybody below, and everybody takes on responsibility and invest themselves. And it works very well when we have periods like the COVID, where I was saying all the other companies that don't work that way. The head of the company, it must have been complicated for that person, but here the responsibility was shared in Arlon between the 60 people working in Arlon. So we can weather the storm much more easily. difficult periods, and the head of the shop sleeps much better at night. So how do you become a head of a shop at Decathlon? Arlon is also a very good example. Arlon was chosen by the co-workers in the shop. We had 7 recruiters, and they wrote the profile. We would like to have a manager who is like this and like that. And afterwards, we published this offer, this job offer, because I was one of the persons they recruited. When the candidates came in, we were 7. And after interviews with the candidates, and the head of the office was chosen unanimously. If one of the 7 persons said, no, that's not the right person, we're not going to take that person. Okay, so this is a very distributed management, very original. Tell us, in your survey in Deloitte, what is your echo to this? Then what I find interesting in such a survey, in a white paper, is that we ask people about their perception. So the subjective can be turned into the objective with a few statistics. Yes, freelancers, I agree with you. What the young people expect today before they join a big group is management of stress, sustainability, and societal impact. The level of stress has drastically gone down during the pandemic. We look at the statistics between April and September. The young people were less stressed, less under stress. Nevertheless, when you ask them initially in December 2019, a third of this X and Y generation had taken days off because of stress. So mental health is very important for them, and we need to work on stress management in the company to be able to integrate them. There are 52% in our survey to recognize that various companies and big groups do a lot for the well-being coaching to attract them. So stress management. Second point, sustainability. Young people want the company to be involved in a sustainable development, particularly environmental development. The environment is very important. One of the main criteria perceived as very important for these generations. 2/3 of them believe it won't be easy in the future because of the pandemic and everything we've seen. So 2/3 think that their company will unfortunately no longer be so good in defending the environment or be as sustainable in the future. The third important elements are after stress and sustainability, societal impact. Young people want to be useful. They want to work in a company that is useful for society. The number of young people who think that their company or their job is not useful is on the increase over the past 10 years, an increase of 10 points over the past 10 years. You talked, Karine, about the smartphone. What we see in Deloitte and in our study, we see the device is important, but you and I, Chris, are in a sector where we have the smartphone, the iPad. So this is a common challenge. That's the apps we use on these devices, the communication tools. How to make sure that when I'm at home, I can communicate as well as an open face. Co-creation tools, it's very nice to communicate, but not only top-down, there needs to be some interaction to promote the creation of content, and tools for feedback and interaction so that we can feel how the teams, find out how the teams feel, take the appropriate measures if something is wrong and if you find out that things are not happening so well remotely, since we're all working remotely now. I think you also set up other structures. You talked about the Council of Young Professionals. How does that work? Yes, all these values, stress, societal impact, sustainability, we try to develop them in the integration of our young people in what we call the Councils of Young Professionals. Young people meet monthly to propose action with the management and the hierarchy in Deloitte. And then you talked about supporting the newcomers, onboarding. Of course, we try to convey the values of our company, but also get some feedback from the young people. It's always very important, very, very interesting. Now, if I now go into the chat to go take a short break, one person is asking what is the scale you measure to scale you use to measure stress. In a study like this, there are many questions to split the objective from the subjective. So this is about perception. We're just asking people, were you stressed? Answer yes or no out of 27,000 young people we asked. Another question, we see that the reverse mentoring is something that is becoming very trendy. That's what you do permanently because it's almost institutionalized in your company. This is also something we see at Deloitte or in your company, Matthieu. The reverse mentoring, no. In Deloitte, what we, I think this is this response to another question. In Deloitte, what we set up is coaching, proximity coaching. So always somebody that is very close to you, but of course we have external coaches coming in who have their added value, who are very important, particularly for strategic managers, for the managers. But then we try that every young person coming in should get a coach in the team for an exchange and share the values to make sure that they were well understood. Now, before moving on to Matthieu, I have a question to Karine. The system that you were talking about sounds ideal, because when we're listening to you, it's great, it's cool, works fine. It didn't happen overnight, I suppose. There was certainly some trial and error. So what are the traps that you need to avoid when you want to share responsibility in the way you do in your company in Decathlon? So as I was saying, Decathlon is an international group. We are not at the same pace, and everybody depends on the countries, on the shops, and you're right, it depends on the leader of the shop and the impulses the leader wants to set, the manager wants to set. There's nothing you can do about that. And of course, you need to have a leader in a shop who wants to change things. We're going forward, we're moving forward, but we need a framework. That's important. Sometimes we say, great, we can do lots of things, but the framework is important. Okay, we're still a company, we still have customers, so we cannot do anything or everything. The big risk is that everybody says, well, look, since I'm entitled to do whatever I want, I will do whatever I want. But this is an organization. I talk about the collective. This cannot work. So sometimes we go into reverse, saying, oh, we went too far. It also linked to the people working in your shop. You need to accept that everybody is not moving forward at the same speed. Some people, when you give them too much freedom, they don't know what to do with it. So they need to be helped, supported, and accept that these people need more time. And perhaps you have some teams or co-workers who still need support from a leader, and others who are ready to take the responsibility and take off. So the number of speeds in a company, in a shop, and this needs to be accepted with goodwill and empathy, and then it works.
So, Matthieu, what's your reaction here? Well, let me take up a few points I've just heard here from our co-panelists. Stress at work, first point. In our company, we have no setup for different positions, or if we do have any, there's only in reduced format. Each and everyone has to have the possibility to be up to all positions. Otherwise, we would limit the expansion of the capacities of each individual to realize themselves within the organization. That's one point. Second point, this feeling of equality between all members of the, just like Karine said for Décathlon, we don't have a statute as such. Each and everyone should be able and willing to do everything, all roles to be fulfilled. If their respective project is framed in the collective, co-constructed within. We had a team with 500 team members together with suppliers, partners, and this vision was to be committed, all of us together, for a better world. And this responds to what Deloitte said that the new generation needs an opportunity to fit themselves into an organization, a whole setup where this society aspect is taken into account as well. Coaching is open in our company. We don't have strata. It's open to all members of staff at all levels because otherwise we would not have an intrinsic feeling of equality amongst all. So the coaching tool is put at everyone's disposal. My post description has just one line, one value: performance via happiness. And this is my focus point. This delivers the opportunity to realize myself in all kinds of areas. Specific areas. I love horses, for instance. This is really a passion for me. And I followed the training about 2 years ago in accompanying assisted following along with horses, so an involvement as all teams wanting to add other skills can have personal development linked to the accompanying of horses. And my passion could be connected into the company as well. The Swiss response line, 3 elements: what I love to do, what I know how to do, and what the organization needs. There are 3 aspects. And if we connect these 3 elements, we reach a stress level that's much lower, and fulfillment and auto-direction levels, which is really important within an organization as ours. Let me challenge you a little bit here, because this seems a little bit angelic, what you're all describing here. Seems to be working, obviously, but still, we have still a lot of organizations we encounter saying, well, you know, we are putting into place new technology, completely disruptive for all our jobs. A whole set of things are done by artificial intelligence, not done as they used to be. We need more skills and competence for people. We have to have our members of staff totally reintegrated in the global structure. This has to happen as well. Your ideal world, as you describe it, how can you have a handle on all those disruptions? Well, we leave an open space for the look of each and everyone. We call the period we just said not as a crisis. We have decided to not translate this period, the COVID period, as a period of crisis, but simply as a period allowing each and everyone to reintegrate themselves in the company. It's a learning period for us. Company as ours, is it more agile than others? Well, we needed 2 hours on the 17th of March to have all team members, more than 450 people, launch them in autonomy and telework from their homes. This happened quite quickly, and an organization as ours was able to do so in such a period. Second element, just a few examples. This period that lasted a certain while has allowed us via different present-day tools, with collaborative team setups to have all kinds of cooperation within the group. First of all, we had a decontamination department set up in a few days. We have readapted ourselves. All team members and all brains representing this organization have contributed to invent ourselves decontamination servants, for instance, or another example, quite paradoxical here. The distanciation separated us, but we had self for virtual pauses or breaks. You could do everything you did when we're still together at the office, have a coffee, share a coffee on a video screen with someone else in this virtual break room, if you like. And this can only happen when everything is made available to open up this for the new generation. It's much easier. I've heard about their capacity to use video conferences. A new service has been launched intra-company as well. At Chronoflex, we had a new measuring tool directly on video. And have a look at the population that is the most looking for these types of reporting. It's the new generations using more and more tools of that type within the Chronoflex organization. Well, with all the things you're describing here, this happened naturally. When you have new functionalities coming up here, automatic archiving, or having a look at what's happening in the shops. Well, how do you do this, Karine? Well, we try to create new tools all the time. New tools reducing all tasks without added value in the retail area. If you want to maintain your position, you have to privilege the customer contact. Tasks without added value, taking up a lot of time for the salespeople, they have to be reduced simply. So we prepare the setup of the environment here. We're talking about new tools as well, a robot inventorizing our products during the night. Stock management is really important in our shops to find easily what you're looking for instead of our human elements in the staff to take up such an important role. We'll have another system brought up. And so all staff members are really happy not to be obliged any longer to do the tasks without added value, to think about new things and to be in the presence of our customers. You have to explain our members of staff, our team members, what these new functions or tools deliver as a result, and there's a lot of support. If you explain adequately what the new opportunities will be, what they will not any longer be obliged to do, well, it's implemented quite easily. Let's come back to the study based on what we've just heard. Mr. Match, François? Well, personally, professionally, what's been done about entrepreneurship and involvement in the study, we can see this being reflected. There was a pandemic impact, obviously. We could see certain things before, the triptych workplace, workforce. What kind of work has to be done, where, and who wants to do it? With workforce, we talked about the impact on working hours as well. Coming back to work, well, Generation Y and Z are rather positive. Seeing what the companies are doing right now, the medium-sized groups, the bigger ones as well, what is being done to accompany them on their new work track, remuneration system, and so on and so forth. Essential point, clearly in December already, before the pandemic, is that the young generations are more and more looking for training and education. They leave schools, arrive on the labor market, and less than half of them think they have all the necessary skills to do the job they've been foreseen for. Even more important is the group of those being convinced to have all the tools necessary is diminishing from year to year. Workplace, well, all the young people think they're free, and none of them had done any home office before the pandemic, so in 2019. So now they're all used to it. The stress level have been reduced. Now they want to take up the opportunity here. They want a company to push it further, but take initiatives in the IT area, for instance. Congratulations for the 2 hours, but Christian and myself, we've seen companies who needed a little bit more than 2 hours to create a home working or teleworking structure. So most companies did have difficulties here. So in the area of IT and flexibility, they would like to have higher confidence levels here. Lots of young people think that employers trusted them in the pandemic period concerning home working approaches. Environment, there's a link to climate. The young people want to continue to work from home, and they want to continue as well to see the development of digital tools linked to home office to reduce job-related trips. So less road occupation to go to the job. I think 56% of the study were wondering about relocalizing to leave the major urban centers, maybe in rather set up in rural areas if home working could be generalized. Now we have to wait and see. There's a positive first impression here, but if a group manages to have work constraints, work space constraints brought together, you had 6 out of 10 in favor here. But young people will be loyal. For the first time we're doing this study, it has been done on a yearly basis for more than 10 years now. The group of young people wanting to stay in their present company is high as compared to young people wanting to leave their company in the coming 2 years. At Deloitte, we try to put this into place for workspace. We have a remote and home office policy working quite nicely, and we're still developing it. We're advancing here with all the exchange relationships with the young people to train them, personalized training paths. We are still wondering about workplace, workforce for our customers and internally as well, and that's important. Christian, why we take part in the IMS project with Explorer here, and as a huge opportunity for us as well. So interesting question we just received here, linked to what all of you have been saying right now. We have this image of a company being young and dynamic with a very low average age, or not. This might be frightening to people being not quite as young, maybe, people in a single education or context in their family, or having a disability. How can you combine the diversity values in an environment where we just have kids playing around, if you like? How does it work to integrate all of them? Work quite nicely, actually. I think we have a good example. I've been working for Decathlon for 4 years now, so my career has been elsewhere mainly, but it's working quite nicely. We have projects, gender, diversity-based, when I was working in a shop in France, I had a team member, female team member, who had a mental disability. So we have this being done regularly. It needs an adaptation of the job surrounding. Diversity is a topic we mentioned everywhere right now, but don't think that we have just young people within Decathlon. We have for all categories represented. We welcome all of them, and we are not recruiting only practicing sports people, but there's all kinds of sports. But you have mostly young people. Yeah, mostly still, but it's a limiting belief here to think that we have only young people. When I started Décathlon, I was older than 40 years, and I was still hired. We need candidates being willing to integrate. There's an image, I will never be hired because I'm too old in such a company. In Arlon, it's the same. We have team members for 3-4 years now, older than 50. You have to be open and willing to do something else and, practice sports. That's the only criterion you have to practice. So playing pétanque, for instance, or boule is okay as well. Absolutely. So entrepreneurship in an internal way. So do you have specific examples? Matthieu mentioned the example of decontamination as a department. Where did it come from? Well, all those topics that have been coming in this PN we just went through have been brought up internally and externally, actually, because a team member being at home can be married, be living with someone else, because we have all people involved here, and all can launch a project and realize themselves within the company. This is completely in line with the collective project. This is the vision of the company as it's been built up beforehand. And this is possible as soon as the information is available. Information is not a power element any longer. What allows us to go from a basic idea towards an implementation of a project? Well, you have to make the information available within a company. A very concrete example here. We have the president with the same level of information as a team member just joining the organization. So we have an intrinsic equality of all, and information is no longer a power element. We have to allow people to develop themselves, realize themselves, and be successful, or sometimes fail. Failure up front is the best basic situation to be successful afterwards. What are the last mistakes I've made this year is one of our questions. If this question is not being asked, well, maybe not enough risks have been taken. What is key in this context, from my point of view, is to have data available to all members of the group, allowing them to get training, to acquire skills they don't have yet, in order to allow them to contribute to things that will be an element of passion for themselves and fun as well. As I said, it's about passion and fun, 3 elements: what I like to do, what I know how to do, and that can be quite as well, and what the organization needs in a certain moment of time. 90% of organizations present within the group, organizations born out of the idea of a team member within our company. We had failures as well. For instance, there was a project for a visit and the capital in Paris at the municipality, but it didn't work out. Then people had to wonder, if I had to launch this project again, what could I do differently to be successful? Not remain where you are, at a failure. Well, we had a failure, okay, but what can I do differently from tomorrow onwards? I'm looking at my own experience from our internal context. Quite often we have an idea that people have no ideas or don't want to participate, don't want to play along, and it's great. But if you have a closer look, it's the contrary that's true. We have ID creation projects, ID labs, international ID competitions as well. It's always surprising to see how many people take part with, frankly, fantastic ideas. The energy that's being developed here and generated is really amazing. And we've launched a program. Young people could launch a startup, and we thought, well, no one will join in. And it's not true at all, because we had a lot of people grabbing the occasion. It's quite fun. On the LinkedIn profile, you can see at PwC consultant and CEO. Quite fun to see that, but it's really serious. You know, they're both. And it's even more than entrepreneurship. They do it for themselves, and we allow them to do so. But I think it's also this willingness of the employer to cut them some slack and reduce their control level. We have this verticality being cultural for generations now, with strata that are structured in an extremely rigid way, and all of a sudden we discover that models as yours work quite nicely as well. And as soon as we cut them some slack and allow them to do so, and everybody has been put into telework from day A to day B in the lockdown phase, as in all companies actually, and all were wondering everywhere, is it going to work? And everybody are giving the same feedback now. Well, actually, it's working. And it's a matter of trust. And you mentioned it yourself, François, just beforehand. We trusted them. We didn't have a choice. That's true, too. And how many people witnessed from the market side said, well, we would have never done it like that. For months, we've been discussing about telework. For years, Mr. Scharff, we've been talking about telework, and we were obviously not in agreement here. We didn't want to do it, but we didn't have a choice. We had just one choice. We had to trust. And in fact, to live through what we've been living through now, the COVID phase has shown that a whole series of management modes can be challenged by now. And delegation is working and telework is working. There are certain limits. You have to create a certain environment for all of it. You talked about it. People get some more freedom and don't know what to do with it. People on their own don't have a frame for it. It's working for 60 to 80%, and then 20 or 30% don't know what to do with their freedom newly acquired. And so this work mode is working as well. And this corresponds completely with the willingness of young people. Let's not get back to the definition, but young people arriving on the labor market, let's say. And what's a little bit worrisome here, in my view, is that the pool of people will be reduced in coming years. Statistics in Europe, Japan, for instance, 400,000 workers are lost on the labor market every year. All OECD countries, with the exception of just one, will have a negative development of their labor market. So young people coming to the labor market from 2030 onwards, and that's tomorrow, except for India. And all other OECD countries will be negative, even China, paying for its one-child policy right now. So we all have a challenge here, which is clearly visible. How will corporate future to attract these young people we obviously need? Yesterday we had a dinner with about 30 CEOs in preparation of today's event. And Jean Bernot, maybe you know him, former McCain Europe boss. He's working with Mohamed Yunus right now. And Jean told us, 15 years ago, within McCain, when we were looking for something in marketing and also you are established in Leeds, so but it was extremely difficult. No one wanted to come. And there was a generational change within McCain. And we stepped up to the next generation, and there was a new sense created with the company. There was no bottom line. It had to be the most important, much as important as possible. But now there had to be a society impact as well. We want a social entrepreneurship. It has to work economically, but it has to work societally as well. So, and now we're getting more and more demands. People want to work with us, and the branding has changed. So we want to be leaders within our societies, and we have to strike a balance here between the values that the upcoming generations is pushing forward. Quest for sense, autonomy, self-realization, economy, ecology. We want a planet that will be working still in the future. They have a look at us, at all the corporates. You have created this mess. You generated CO2 volumes. How do you want to reduce your carbon footprint now as bosses have more well-being, more happiness, not absolute happiness like people in Bhutan are creating right now. But we do have clearly a responsibility here as well. If we could come to a conclusion as well in the last panel contribution individually, if you have a look at your vision now concerning integration and recruitment of young people with new management, a few key elements here. What would be the key concepts coming to mind right now for our audience, about 400 listening to us right now? Maybe the other way around, François, and we finish with Karine. Well, if you have a look at the figures, it's a matter of perception, what an immense richness and willingness in this generation coming to the labor market with very beautiful values here shared among the whole generation, with some of the old ones as well. So we have to grab this opportunity now, seeing that young people are waiting for this, and they want to be loyal to their company if the opportunities are being created to welcome them and to integrate them. Matthieu? It's an element of trust. You mentioned it. Trust is key. Capacity of new organizations to welcome all these young people. What's happening in classic companies when a young recruit is arriving? They will learn their job within a week, and then after a week's time, they got a job. So I have lots of ideas. And what are these young people are being told in a lot of companies? Do your job, and we'll see afterwards. If we can open up this to welcome them really, so this will create a huge potential. Trust is key into each and every team member within an organization. Karine? Well, he stole my concept already. I wanted to say trust as well. And I do it. I say it and I'll do it, That's what we say. Don't wait for an authorization by anyone here. We're entitled to failures. Well, maybe it's a bad idea or partially good or bad idea. You never know. But you have to go for it and you trust it. Go for it and try to implement and we'll see. And at the end only you know whether it was a good one or a bad one. And there has to be trust brought up front. This might be an ideal conclusion already for this panel. I think we have all the ingredients for the starting phase of a solution in this case, because these new generations are really amazing. I think our young people are amazing. They remind us of all this right on time. You've been working in a model that you've chosen. We don't want that model. We want to have more sense, more contact, more trust. We want to have more independence, but we want to be in a group as well. And we want to be valued. We want ecology. We want something that's sustainable, something that makes sense. And it's our job in the future to make sure that our young people, but our companies as well, find these young people wanting to work for you. Maybe one topic to be reminded of is an initiative that you mentioned beforehand, François, Digital Explorer, allowing precisely to all these young people to get in touch with companies and co-create the jobs of the future. If you don't participate yet in this initiative, I really want to invite you to register here and to help these young people to invent with us the world of the future. It's not so much a service to them, but also to yourself. because to have a new vision, a new look on things, to understand from the young people's side how they see their jobs in the future, it's even more a gift to yourself than to them. So I really invite you to register to this interview. Dear panel members, thank you for your contributions. I think we've really had magnificent examples here of models that are working already, and we wanted to deliver to you a series of examples of companies, well-known companies, different sizes, different sectors, reinventing a model, working differently, and showing that it's possible. And via the statistics, we can see that this is exactly what our young people are expecting. Now I would a little bit be daring and say it's up to you now, up to you to adapt your models. We have a short break now. As indicated already, it's important, and you've done so in your company, Matthieu, it's important to continue the connecting activity. So for about 20 minutes now, you'll have an opportunity, if you want to do so, with the little button on the upper side of your screen to see who's available for the exchange, and maybe set up a meeting already and take a cup of coffee or tea with something you don't know yet to have a practical exchange. And in about 20 minutes, we'll meet again here. Thank you to our audience and thank you to our panel members. Bye-bye.